Welcome back to the Warcraft news. There are big stories this week. Data suggests the game may be popping off like never before. The worst kept secret of the expansion's been blown wide open. We may have a patch release date, free heroic gear, and some more of some people's favorite part of the war within. Even more shots of Xal'atath's feet. And that means that somebody at the cinematics department learnt a lesson. Be like Tarantino, create your own luck. With that said though, let's talk about the numbers going up. Let's get the big story done first. This is good news for Blizzard because apparently World of Warcraft is at its biggest point ever, and that seems completely insane. We think the Days of Wrath could never be back, and they won't be. WoW will never be that size in one incarnation. But that's where it gets interesting. So Kira, operator of Warcraft Logs, believes that WoW is at an all-time high player count, and that's all down to the numbers that they're getting from their site, and of course China's big return to Azeroth. You see, NetEase and Blizzard fell out. Allegedly, Bobby Kotick really pissed off NetEase. They fell out, the deal fell through, and that meant that China missed Wrath Classic. Wrath originally was humongous over there, and the renewed partnership that has now set up Wrath Classic servers basically means that there are now 11 million characters with Ulduar logs, right? 11 million characters, and that's on the Chinese Wrath servers alone. Kira tweeted this: "The numbers of players in China playing Wrath of the Lich King is on par with the highest retail peak we've ever seen in Warcraft Logs' lifetime." And that does mean something. Warcraft Logs has been a bedrock of the community. It has been generating numbers, giving us statistics for years and years. Now yes, this is not complete conclusive evidence, but 11 million characters exploding into Ulduar certainly is kind of crazy. Because even if you say that there's like 4 characters a person, which seems a bit unrealistic for Classic, that would still be over 2 million players at max level playing that product and raiding. That doesn't even count the people who won't be getting Ulduar logs. So it could be closer to 3 or 4 million, depending on the number of logs, and that's on top of the around 7 million that we were back in Dragonflight, and then you add on top of that everybody who has returned to the War Within. And that does mean they could actually be in spitting distance of Wrath of the Lich King's 12 million peak. But we should temper expectations a little bit. Look, if Blizzard did actually beat an all-time record, and they felt it was sustainable enough that they could actually give us, like, maybe not a public number, but just say that this is the peak, I think they would have. I mean, Xbox would certainly like to loudly report on a big win. Like, what incentive do they have not to? There's also then the split with China revenue, right? Because a whole bunch of that's going to NetEase, so the success is too rooted in China, they may not want to trumpet it out too loudly. But still, I do think the Warcraft is on the upswing, even statistically. Take that Illyria animation. It's up to 7.9 million views on YouTube, right? In 1 month, it is the 15th most watched video on their channel. It's eclipsed everything except for the real big cinematic, so that's kind of impressive by the numbers. Thankfully though, we do have some modern numbers. So WoW Progress shows a 64% increase in heroic first boss kills on the 3rd day as compared to the same in Dragonflight. That's actually pretty damn impressive. I mean, the first boss in Heroic is obviously just, that's just a piece of free loot, essentially. But still, as an example, that's a number that my guild will contribute to. Thing is, though, we did our normal clear. We're going to be doing our heroic clear towards the end of this week. So I've got to imagine there's a lot more that will go into that number. And again, first boss kills, they don't exactly tell us much, but they do give us a good benchmark for participation. Now you can absolutely argue that there are other variables like, say, access to delve gear, hero talent power creep, and a general trend towards easier raids that is present now and certainly was not present, as present back then in Vault of the Incarnates. But I still think this can't be a bad sign. So don't place any bets yet, and trust that we will do a full breakdown once we've got enough numbers that we can feel confident in giving you a good analysis. It's not all good news today though. So Warcraft Rumble, according to longtime game journalist Stephen Totillo, is being put onto post-launch live ops, which basically just means they're going to try to make as much as they can, but very much while spending as little as they can. The game is not dying, but don't expect any more content, and certainly even before layoffs, it's not like I was expecting much content either. That's from it, not from us. You can go and read the full history of the Earthen up on Bellular.games, which is our site, so if you want to know everything there is to know on them, that is the place to go, and we have so much content queued up for next week. There was one big, fresh, juicy lore video that I think you're going to love, a new Lore Walking podcast episode, and a ton of gameplay content. And if you want to get in shape for Season 1 right now, maybe you did your first raid now and you think, oh boy, Could have done more DPS. Well, why not check out our Keybinding Masterclass, which I'll link down below. The big picture of the site membership is how I want us to run on our own steam rather than relying on platforms and algorithms. And a big thank you to the hundreds of members who have joined up already over the last while. Okay, let's talk about the next patch. We know that the next patch is going to be live in November at some point to celebrate the anniversary, but Blizzard may be taking their 8-week content cadence promise extremely seriously. I mean, not even an expansion launch is enough to deter them here, apparently, because the anniversary event calendar is actually up in the public test realm, where there it says it's slated for October 23rd, and that is just 5 weeks from now. That's the thing that'll bring all the crazy events, the Transmog, the class and hero talent reworks, and of course, the Blackrock Depths raid. Yeah, we've only just started the season, but there's basically a whole stack of content on the way. Now, not all PTR calendar dates will make it to live completely intact, but again, it matches the 8-week period, it matches the calculations I made last week, so I do think this is something that Blizzard at least wants to make happen. Speaking of making things happen, we just did the raid. We defeated Ansarek, and with that, we of course got a new cinematic. And compared to the campaign stuff, it wasn't exactly exciting unless, you're a certain kind of person. But in all seriousness, I think the clear point is that the campaign climax is like the real finish to the story, and this is more just about like how Xal'atath operates, how she deals with people. But in all seriousness, it was a great scene. It was a simple scene. Zal just reveals a little bit more of her plans and a lot more of her persona. The Dying Queen realizes much too late that all of her ambition was just another tool to further Xal'atath's goals, all of course while Xal'atath gloats at her. And I've got to say, like, the voice work, the acting, the camera work, they were all great. It obviously lacks the budget of the full campaign cinematics, but I just think that the actual core story there really just sold it. And it's fun to think about the desperation and betrayal sort of felt towards Xal'atath. So many people are basically going to be spluttering in their deathbed, "You promised," and she'll continually say, "Oh, I wish you lasted longer." What does it mean, though? Well, Xal'atath teasing aside, we get 2 more lines that just tell her a lot more about her personality and her motive more than anything else. She says this: "And now you learn the true lesson of the Void. Only the strongest survive." That seems simple, but there is some stuff to unpack. So she's been absorbing all of this power into the Darkheart, I suppose to become the most powerful. She recognizes that with Void, strength is the thing that actually matters. So if she needs all of that power, then what must the current strongest Void entity look like? Just think about her history as a character. She's a survivor of, quote, ordeals you cannot comprehend. She's, quote, risen from the ashes of countless empires. So it does sound like long-term survival is her motive, and she believes the only way is to win the ultimate battle. And it makes sense. Even just in Azeroth, she watched what happened to N'Zoth when he tried to use his weakness as a weapon and outsmart everybody. We just blew him to pieces, and we did so with the World Soul, which is sort of the thing that she wants. So she basically knows she can convince people whose ambition, despair, or even hope blinds them to the bigger picture. I mean, hell, she was basically trapped in the Blade for nearly a millennia. She wants revenge from that, and underneath all the gleeful goading, I think she may just be a bit more desperate for power than she would want us to know, because if she doesn't get that power, she thinks she'll lose. She's likely spent millions of years trapped in a dagger, with her only weapon being her mind. If we're going to take the mental consequences of that seriously, then yeah, of course she's going to have extreme goals and ambitions, and that explains the complete rage when Illyria clips the Darkheart. But there is one strange question going on here. When the hell did the raid happen? Have you thought that? I mean, I've certainly thought that. The raid released a week after the campaign finished, and oddly, there's no story lead-in. We just turn up and kill her. At first glance, it looks like maybe Xal'atath wasn't like that bothered by the Darkheart being damaged, right? Because we, last week, do that, damage the Darkheart, and she just turns up again and doesn't really seem that perturbed. That just doesn't make sense to me. What makes sense to me is strange pacing on Blizzard's part, and probably gameplay planning and balancing getting in the way of the actual story. Because if you comb through the dialogue, no one ever definitively states what's going on, at least with Ansarek. But in a way, it almost feels like Blizzard are trying to avoid saying things real hard and fast. And on top of that, none of the army that we made to fight Xal'atath's forces were in the raid. It was just us and the Severed Pact characters. So it's weird. Now, when we start the campaign chapter, Illyria says Xal'atath is making the first move, not Ansarek. After delivering the Broken Queen to the Weaver alive, though, there's no statement along the lines of, "Now we must depose her traitorous daughter." It's all oddly non-committal. Now, plot-wise, I think the most sensible series of events is fairly clear, that we end up taking out Ansurek first, but that by that point, Xal'atath had got what she needed. She'd spread around the Black Blood, mined it for years, and took control of the Nerubians through the Ascended, who of course she can influence via the Black Blood, and then she does that to launch the attack on Hallowfall that ends the story. That's at least what makes sense to me, but it is oddly unclear. Maybe story mode, which opens up next week, will give us like a breadcrumb quest that kind of explains this stuff, but big picture, my guess is that the campaign and raid teams are basically trying to not hold each other back. Maybe things just got locked in a little bit too late, and that means it's kind of awkward now. I'm not super sure how I feel about it. I mean, it is kind of a shame, but I did like the way that the campaign felt like it had a satisfying ending, right? A little bit closer to an FF14 where, you know, the raid isn't really getting in the way of the main storyline, but if Blizzard does do that, they should take care not to lose gameplay spectacle. That's where FF14 gets massive work done with their trials. As for the raid itself, well, I've cleared it normal, and one thing's for sure, the trend of Dragonflight is continuing. This is not a hard raid on normal mode. It is an absolute cakewalk. So, yeah, like 1 3-hour night of basically having unoptimized characters, though some people that did go very far delving themselves out, yeah, we got through the whole thing. I can at least say I had a blast. I thought some bosses were cool, but obviously I need to wait until I do heroic mode to really report back. Okay, let's finish things off then, because a lot's going on. The good news is we'll be diving deep into classes next week, and on Monday we'll be diving deep into delves, basically because there's just been hotfixes and changes for days and days and days, so I want to bring it together into one big picture and kind of give you a guide that makes sense in light of all the changes. Now, for the immediate though, if you want a mount that's got features, but you don't like the yak and the grummels, Blizzard are going to sell you the solution with this lovely bear. It's a really nice mount, but again, it really blows that the only other Transmog mount in the game is a paid one, so ouch. The other drama of the week then was bans. And as always, there's some good and bad. Essentially, people were able to creatively use some game mechanics to get way further ahead on the severed threads renown, to the point where it basically isn't fair. So Blizzard obviously needed to do something. They did do bans, they did do rollbacks. What matters though is what they actually said. So here's the quote. "Game integrity demands that there be consequences beyond just rolling back gains, or we're just incentivizing competitive players to take immediate advantage of every exploit they find." That is true. People always say, exploit early, exploit often. It is impossible for Blizzard or any dev to ensure that no exploits will ever happen. But it is possible for them to say there will always be consequences. So what they've got to do is to have consequences and apply them evenly. That makes sense. This is a live game, and as much as delaying everything until a single bug can't even be found, that seems laudable, but there's 2 points. Number one, loads of bugs only happen in a live environment for a very many complex technical reason, and also World of Warcraft is a live game. If Blizzard dally, then other games will just come in and try to take their players, so it's always a balancing act. The downside, though, of course, is that with all ban waves, there can be some false positives, can be some people caught up in the crossfire. Then I've got some Transmog news. So first up, Dragonflight PvP ensembles, which in many cases look pretty damn good, are coming in 11.0.5, which means you can farm out Marks of Honor for them. Wowhead then also came upon Elite ensembles. I saw loads of people saying, oh my god, Blizzard are going to be selling the Elite armor that people ground so hard to get. But no, they seemingly, if they make it into the game, will only be for people who originally unlocked them in the correct season. The PTR then turned up another oddity for us, Season of Discovery weapons, and these are really neat, especially if you, say, want a Spyro shield or this Paladin sword. I mean, man, this Paladin sword looks absolutely incredible. Now, there's no word on if they'll actually be obtainable, if these are maybe some sort of crossover promotion event, or if more things may even come, like, say, the Axe of Cenarius, which would be pretty exciting. But for even more Mogs right now, what you can do is unlock an Earthen and blast out the starting zone. Doing that will unlock a bunch, and they can be used in other dwarves. It's also clear that Blizzard want to make good in the trading post, or at least be seen to try to do that. So this month there is a mount at the end, which is certainly good, and then there's big hitters in the 1105 data mining, and I mean big. Sylvanas Coomers, your time has came, as have the big sweaty muscle men who get to have a Varian Rin Gladiator transmog that looks pretty damn cool. And for another slice of the fan base, the bad news is you'll never get your Draenei Fuda, but what you will get some magical witch girl transmog, which is actually going to be on the trading post when previously it was a store bundle. Now that I've offended everybody, though, here's something uncontroversial. These hoods and capes that are new look so damn good. You can't get them yet, they'll probably be a future trading post, but what you can do is get loads of gear now and avoid loads of gearing mistakes, and you can do that by watching our Season 1 gearing guide next.